three masked balaclavaed individuals barged in. They'd take a loaded 9mm handgun into a store. This thing was cocked and ready to go.
It was like walking into a nightmare.
Craig came straight from the side area of the living quarters at the store, and he rained a number of blows down on one of these individuals.
What happened next was absolute chaos.
The taller figure simply raised the gun and fired one shot. That was the one that penetrated straight into Craig's chest.
It was just mayhem and total mindless violence.
We are on a manhunt. Not only have they committed a homicide, but they are armed and dangerous and out there in the community.
Just 15 miles outside of Birmingham lies the quiet village of Fairfield.
The area itself is very quaint, very picturesque. Rolling hills, farmland, you just get those farmland smells that drift into the village, And I've known it for a long, long time because I've lived here for most of my life. Everybody does know everybody in Fairfield. People feel safe, and they should feel safe in a small village like this.
Yeah, it's a very close-knit community, and the Fairfield Post Office is at the heart of that community.
When I was a lad growing up, I'd walk to the shop, which was the post office in Fairfield. So it's got that feel, that family feel of the post office being in the village that everybody sort of gravitates towards, really, to get their local supplies.
In 2003, Judy and Ken Hodson Walker decided to move to Fairfield and take over the running of the post office with their son Craig.
It's a lovely village, beautiful village, one shop, one church, one school. The people support each other. It was an easy decision to buy the property and the business. We moved in on the Thursday. Then we went up to the local pub, which is the Swan, and we walked in, and the landlord and landlady said, "Welcome to Fairfield." And we just thought, oh, that's amazing, absolutely amazing to go somewhere where nobody knows you, and they just say welcome. And it was just, from then on, we just gradually got to know people. You feel that you had your own little place in the world.
The post office in Fairfield was the hub of the local community. It's the centre. It's where you go for your pint of milk, your morning newspaper. So Ken and Judy and Craig were, part of that. People saw them every day. And so they were kind of really at the heart of that community. People were very fond of them.
Friday the 9th of January, the worst day of my life and my husband's life. We got up as normal, we did the newspapers, we went to get the milk in, and then I went to get changed.
From upstairs, Judy suddenly hears a scream coming from the shop.
Before I knew what was happening, Craig came out of his bedroom, ran down the hall, down the stairs, pushed past me, grabbed the bat.
He must have been woken up, and so he literally, I think, just left his warm bed as he heard this fracas downstairs. So he came downstairs just wearing simply white boxer shorts. So yeah, you couldn't be more vulnerable, and obviously knew that somebody was attacking that store.
I ran down to the shop. There was these three perpetrators with masks, couldn't see their faces. There was a guy with a gun in his hand. There was two others, just being very vicious.
The scene that confronts Judy and Craig is horrifying. Ken is being attacked by the masked men who are demanding access to the post office safe.
It was like walking into a nightmare. The initial shock of seeing what was happening. And they were just there, wanting the money, but there was no way because they had the timing wrong.
Unbeknown to the robbers, the safe is time-locked to open at 9 a.m.
The gang's attempts to get the post office cash are thwarted, and the violence they are raining down on the family is escalating.
It was just mayhem, chaos, and total mindless violence.
In a desperate attempt to protect his mother and father, Craig lunges at their attackers with the cricket bat.
Craig came straight from the side area, the living quarters of the store, and he rained a number of blows down on one of these individuals, straight across the upper shoulder and across the hand.
And so Craig could see that he was really hurting his dad. Ken was trying to fight back. What happened next was absolute chaos.
It was the taller figure who turned his attention as Craig backed down an aisle. He simply raised the gun and fired one shot. That was the one that penetrated straight into Craig's chest, and that immediately caused him to fall.
Judy then goes to his aid, and then the robbers continue trying to get the money out of the safe. Ken is trying to confront the robbers to fend them off.
Craig's mom comes in and uses some sort of pole to also rain blows on them, so literally defending her family.
Then the tall gunman fires at Ken and he's shot through the leg.
So he was taken out and taken down, and it hit his lower leg, and then he fell, and then the racking fell on top of him. But these people didn't stop there. They continued to jump on that racking, causing further harm. They were intent on causing him harm and injury. But meanwhile, one of them was still jumping on the counter, trying to break into the cash register using the sledgehammer. But clearly a minute and a half, roughly speaking, had passed. And clearly they thought, if we stay here any longer, we're going to be caught and we're going to be trapped in here. And they just simply fled.
And I went over to Ken, and he was on the floor with his injured leg. And then I went to Craig, and he looked at me and he said, he's gone. Craig had said to his dad, the last word he ever said is, they've got me.
Judy knows there is little she can do to help Craig, but Ken is bleeding heavily, and she has no way of knowing if the masked raiders will return.
I grabbed the phone, tried to phone the police. The next thing, there was armed police officers around, and they said, come away, but I didn't want to come away. And Ken was on the floor, Craig was on the floor, and I was sat down on the floor by the fridge, not knowing what on earth to do. And after that, the ambulance came, and all within 2 minutes, everything, your whole life has changed. And it was just one of those moments that you will never forget. I need to stop now. 2 seconds. Oh.
The residents of Fairfield are waking up to the horrific news that there has been a fatal shooting at their village post office.
This kind of violence descended on them and left in its wake an utterly tragic scene for them to deal with.
Judy's son Craig has been shot and killed by a gang of masked gunmen. Her husband Ken has been rushed into surgery, having taken a bullet to the leg.
I was numb with shock. Your brain shuts down, and I think it's a way of your self-preservation, that you can continue, but you don't know how you're continuing.
One of the things that stood out from that straight away was this poignant image of a son absolutely prepared to do anything that he could to protect his parents.
Craig was happy and he was caring, put family above everybody else. And when he made you a friend, he made you a friend for life. And he was very loyal. He had such a chuckle. When he found something funny, he just made you laugh because he just made you sort of chuckle so much. The Christmas before everything happened, Craig and his partner decided that they would get engaged, and they were both very happy about it. And hopefully she would have moved up and help us run the business. The two of them were just getting on so well together, and in all, it was like we were going to start a new chapter in life with two lots of people running the business. Our lives are completely changed on that day, and will always be changed from that day.
Detective Superintendent John Marsden is one of the first officers to hear about the shooting.
We're talking about an armed robbery that had taken place at Fairfield Post Office, which of course immediately triggered me because I knew it. And I knew then I would do everything I could to make sure we caught the killers involved. So when the officers had turned up, what they found was obviously my mother distraught.
Judy immediately tried to give Craig mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and when paramedics arrived, they tried their best, but he was dead at the scene.
With officers now on the scene, the investigation progresses at speed.
Very quickly, it became apparent that the whole incident had been captured on the CCTV.
That CCTV was absolutely phenomenal for us.
Scrutiny of the CCTV immediately reveals significant details to detectives.
And roughly about 8:23, masked balaclavaed individuals barged in. Camo fatigues, dark coloured sportswear, gloves on.
Their clothing suggests the gang may be forensically aware.
And you've got a witness, and that witness just freezes, trying to be as small as she can be and be as inconspicuous as she can be. She did exactly the right thing.
The shouting must have raised the alarm with Craig, who came straight from the living quarters of the store, brandishing a cricket bat. And he rained a number of blows down on these individuals. Then it was the taller figure who turned his attention as Craig backed down an aisle. He simply raised the gun and fired one shot.
You can also clearly see on the CCTV footage the smaller offender grab the tall man with the firearm and direct him towards shooting Ken.
What's in your mind for you to be grabbing the gunman's arm and dragging it towards a defenceless older person who literally has just seen his son being shot? Meanwhile, one of them was trying to break into the cash register using the sledgehammer. The cash register literally had coins, no more than a few coins in there. And if they walked away with £1, that's all they walked away with. And the carnage that was left as a consequence doesn't bear thinking about.
With their faces covered, police are unable to immediately identify the men. But then, there is a breakthrough when search teams recover one of the weapons used in the raid not far from the post office.
There was a sledgehammer that had been discarded. Orange handle, very distinctive.
You've got several opportunities with that. One is fingerprints, but the other is also DNA, bearing in mind how hard you have to grip a sledgehammer. So if we could find DNA which belongs to one of the suspects, you've got a huge link.
Detectives then hear that witnesses have seen the gang's getaway vehicle abandoned just a few streets away from the post office.
We know that they got into a silver-coloured Volkswagen Golf. It was on false registration plates.
Crooks think that they've got it sorted, right? They've tried to mask the identity of that particular car.
One of the key aspects from the vehicles were the number plates. So we removed those from the vehicle, and they were sent away for forensic analysis.
Detectives quickly uncover the origin of the getaway car.
That Golf had actually been stolen on New Year's Eve from a car key burglary in the Solihull area of Birmingham.
Another terrible attack on an innocent couple. The female was in the house having a shower. I think the husband had gone out to get some supplies, and as soon as he literally turns back up on the drive and enters the house, they barge in and they confront him with this meat cleaver and say, "We want the keys."
The description that the victims in the carjacking gave us was of two guys who were probably of below average height, and you know that from the CCTV in the post office that you're looking at two guys who are actually, again, below average height. You're actually potentially looking at the same suspects.
Further potential forensic evidence is discovered in the gulf in the form of a footwear impression.
People always sort of talk about footwear patterns and identifying things by footwear patterns. But it's not the pattern itself that identifies you. It's things like the wear on it, the size, anything like that. So actually what you're looking for on the soles is damage. We all wear our shoes in different ways. We all walk in different ways. So you'll get wear patterns.
Detectives hope that once they have an offender in custody, they will be able to match the distinctive wear patterns to his shoes. And police have a theory too about the gang's decision to dump the vehicle.
We know it's unlikely that they've abandoned it and then run into a house. The most likely outcome is that they've gone into another vehicle. If we can put those two vehicles together at any time, then that is key evidence.
Knowing the forensic evidence in this case will be crucial, CSI examined the post office CCTV frame by frame.
So when you see the cricket bat connect with one of the suspects, you're immediately thinking injuries. Are there injuries consistent with the bat that will appear on the suspect? You see one of the offenders jump over the counter of the post office. He's put his foot down on that counter. So therefore we've got the opportunity on that counter for shoe prints. It's not something that's going to be contaminated by everybody coming in and out of the post office, because we know that nobody else jumped over the counter. We found a great foot impression on the counter. And then we were slightly puzzled because it was actually a size 5 shoe.
Now that is very, very unusual in an adult male.
You've got an offender who, from the CCTV, is apparently male, but has got very, very small feet. And this is a really unusual aspect and something that potentially is really, really good evidence.
As officers search for the gang, CSI turn their attention to the handgun used to kill Craig Hodson Walker.
And we're looking for the casings, because obviously we're also looking for the weapon, because the markings on bullet casings are unique to the gun that's fired them.
When the recovered bullets and casings are sent for analysis, the information returned to the investigation team about the gun they have come from is chilling.
It's been quite notorious. It's called gun number 6, and it was linked to murders and to armed robberies.
And they're able to match those bullets and bullet casings to a 9mm handgun that it turns out has actually been used in 11 crimes previously.
What you get in the criminal fraternity is that you get pool guns, and there is an armourer, and criminals will go to him and request a weapon for an offence that they're going to commit.
So the way that the tall gunman, raised his hands coldly and shot Craig at point blank range tells me that it's very cold, very callous. You could see that they were criminals that were used to handling firearms and had no concern whatsoever for taking a human life.
The attackers of this post office were highly unlikely to be locals. They would almost certainly have come out to Fairfield from an urban area.
It's fairly likely that a gang like this have come out of Birmingham, given the geography.
Pressure is mounting on police to stop this violent crime gang.
the thing you've got to worry about is the psyche of these people that have shot one person, tried to shoot another, and they could do it again. What was the next target going to be? These people would stop at nothing if left unchecked.
We are on a manhunt. We need to track down these offenders as quickly as possible because they are armed and dangerous and out there in the community.
Police in Fairfield are on a manhunt to track down the masked gunmen who have shot and killed 29-year-old Craig Hodson Walker as he tried to protect his parents.
And I still don't understand why there was so much violence. And I still don't understand why people think life is not important. Because I would have given them money if I could have, instead of Craig losing his life. When he was little, he was very shy, very afraid to answer, even to go and ask for another shoe if you went to a shoe shop. He loved computers and he was really clever. And he loved Christmas, absolutely adored Christmas. He would always think about what people would want as a Christmas present, not just get anything, but really think about it. He didn't suffer fools gladly. He would stand by his convictions. He used to say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not right. He did have flaws, as we all do, but he was a wonderful person.
Police know the gang fled the scene in a stolen VW Golf. Reports now come in that having dumped that vehicle, they made off in a Ford Mondeo.
That they then made their way back to the Birmingham area in that car.
Witnesses are going to tell the police they've left in a Golf, and that's what the police are going to look for. Well, of course, they knew that. Therefore, they had tatty-looking white Mondeo, old car, P-registered, I think, something that was not going to stand out in some ways, certainly to any other witnesses.
Alarmingly, one of the vehicles has been seen in the area in the days running up to the robbery.
It's actually been spotted near various post offices in the days preceding the armed robbery at Fairfield. They've been out casing places, trying to find the best post office to hit.
And they were obviously looking for the post office, basically gave them the best chance of committing the offence without getting caught. They would maybe be looking for things like CCTV in the vicinity, escape routes, entrance routes, all that, where they could put a second vehicle that would not be particularly suspicious.
This was an attack that didn't happen out of the blue. It was clearly planned. It clearly had reconnaissance in the area.
Chillingly, the Hodson Walkers may already have come face to face with the men that killed Craig.
There was footage from that store where it showed that there had been some efforts to case the joint. They'd certainly looked at this particular premises before and been in that premises before.
Evidence is quickly mounting, but the identity of the armed robbers is still uncertain, so police appeal to the public for help.
Within the day, maybe slightly longer, we were starting to hear the names.
These crimes tend to resonate deeply with members of the public, and this was one where we had a huge number of calls into the incident room trying to provide us with information, and this really did progress at speed. We got lots of names coming into the inquiry.
What happened was that the same names kept popping up, so obviously you've got to take that seriously, so you then start looking at these people.
We begin to focus on 4 particular individuals. These have come from inquiries and intelligence development within the incident room.
The names that keep cropping up to the police are Anselm Ribera, who is believed to be the taller gunman, brothers Declan and Christopher Morrissey, the 2 shorter men, and then a 4th man called Adrian Snape, who is thought to be the getaway driver.
Once we have names of suspects, you then go back to the CCTV.
Do they match the description of our offenders? How they walk, how they present themselves, their height, their build?
Obviously, we know now that we've got height discrepancies. We've got a tall suspect and 2 short shorter suspects, and the names that we've been given basically match the description of the suspects in the post office. When we confirmed the identities of the suspects, they were very, very well known both in West Mercia and in West Midlands.
So, names of Anselm Ribera, Declan Morrissey, Christopher Morrissey, obviously brothers, and Adrian Snape were the four. And they had been involved in a number of incidents over the preceding years.
Violent burglaries, car key burglaries, robberies, and in fact, I recall that Anselm Ribera had been released from a sentence for armed robbery and had served 6 years of that sentence. So we knew that he had formed for similar type offending.
I think they like to live this lifestyle which pervade the fact that it was almost boom and bust. Do a robbery, get some money, enjoy yourselves, go and drink, go and take drugs. And it was chaotic in that respect. But certainly robberies, post offices in particular, I think seem to be their easy target.
As police piece together profiles of the four suspects, concerning patterns in their offending begin to emerge.
They were committing these robberies, but they hadn't enforced in the way that they did at Fairfield. This was a step up on their escalation, the desperation probably to where they were going. So left unchecked, they would have continued to cause massive carnage.
Obviously, having got the names of suspects that we're putting at the top of our priority list, what we're also looking for is evidence of association between those individuals. Do they know each other?
You look for CCTV on the day or on the preceding days to look for association between them. You have to establish that these guys knew one another and that they were associating with one another in the days leading up to the robbery. Because the whole point that you're trying to make is that you are talking about a criminal conspiracy here. We actually had CCTV from the premises where Ribera lived, and it actually showed the Morrisseys coming and going to and from Ribera's apartment.
And you could see that. It was almost like a gang forming together at certain times of the day, that as soon as you saw one come out the lift, you'd see the next one emerge, and then the next one, and you'd wait for the fourth one to come, and you'd go, okay, there you are. That's our four. That confident we were that we got the right four, they were working as a gang together.
So now we know that actually these people knew one another, they were associating with one another in the days prior to the robbery.
One of the witness appeals actually turns up some really helpful evidence.
So witnesses saw a number of males walking through a field, walking with bags, black bin bags and a holdall. We've got another witness who sees some burning in that area.
This guy had seen two people, and I believe part of his description, he described the disparity in height for the two people that were burning these items.
We examine the scene and recover a burnt phone and burnt trainers. And obviously we know that other clothing has been burnt, but it's been burnt beyond recognition. But we can recover evidence from the trainers and the phone.
That's the sort of information that is absolutely invaluable.
Again, when you start to find those burn site remnants of shoes that were left half burnt, you go back to the supplier, you go back to the likes of Nike or Adidas, and you say, do you recognise this shoe impression? And they were able to tell us exactly what make that was, what model brand that was.
You've got this link, because we know that we've got certain footmarks in the post office. We've got the mark on the counter. We've got marks in the car, and then we find this pair of shoes, and it's like a sort of a hallelujah moment.
The shoe and footwear prints all appear to belong to a single man. And so, with evidence mounting, police launch a dawn raid to arrest all four suspects.
You can't arrest one and then allow for the fact that the others might hear that that's happened. So it's a coordinated approach where you can arrest all four at the same time before they can be warned.
Thursday the 15th of January, only a handful of days post-event, unified strike, 6 o'clock in the morning, and we go to the homes of Christopher Morrissey, Declan Morrissey, Adrian Snape and Anselm Ribera. All of them arrested pretty much at home in their beds, and you can sort of imagine, can't you, with the fact that a firearm had been used, you can sort of imagine the wake-up call that they got, which is going to be quite surprising, with torches in your eyes and guns pointing at your head, and that's pretty much how it happened. And we take them into custody for the murder of Craig Hodson Walker. And that's only the start of the job. People think when you've made an arrest, the job's done. Far from it. There's lots of work to do to make sure that we could charge them at the end of the day. We know we've only got initially 24 hours to work with people in custody, and at that point, we didn't have lots of evidence to charge.
They can only hold them for a certain amount of time before they have to either release them or charge them. So the race is really on.
It has been less than a week since the armed robbery in Fairfield that saw Craig Hodson Walker gunned down as his horrified parents watched on. Police have 4 suspects in custody.
Ken was in hospital. I did not know how to deal with every minute of every day. And pictures of him were being shown on the TV, which completely floored me every time I saw them.
Without sufficient evidence, police will be forced to release the Morrissey brothers, Anselm Ribera and Adrian Snape, the men they believe killed Craig in cold blood.
At that point, forensic evidence was going to be difficult. There was still lots of things being gathered, lots of things being processed, and lots of things being fast-tracked.
And then the forensic results come in.
There's a partial print that comes back from the sledgehammer, and that actually matches the fingerprint of one of the 2 brothers.
Forensics gathered from the fake license plate on the getaway vehicle also pays dividends.
We actually found fingerprints on the back of those plates, and we were able to match those fingerprints to the suspects.
The Morrissey brothers, Ribera and Snape, are formally charged with the murder of Craig Hodson Walker.
The case went to Crown Court, where all 4 men pleaded not guilty.
For Craig's parents, Judy and Ken, attending court is a harrowing experience.
I found it horrendous to think we were so close to the perpetrators.
The family, immensely strong, showed the solidarity. You got Ken that had been terribly injured and was in hospital for some considerable time, actually, post the event. But they were there, and they were there every single day.
As the offenders stand in the dock, it is immediately apparent that the height disparity between the 6'2" Ribera and the diminutive Morrissey brothers reflects the stature of the 3 men in the post office CCTV. But that's not all.
We videoed Anselm Ribera because he had a very distinctive way of walking. And so we were able, using a comparison between the video from the scene and the video that we had from him in custody, we were able to compare the 2 and confirm that they matched one another.
And it's not only Anselm Ribera's unusual gait that incriminates him.
It was apparent that the gunman, even through his balaclava, had a very, very distinctive nose. And again, we did comparisons with the CCTV, and again, we were able to conclude that it was more likely than not that the gunman was Anselm Ribera.
The day that Ribera gave his evidence, he walked past us, and I think I froze. I knew, even with the mask on, I knew by the shape of his nose, I just knew it was him.
The prosecution then turns its attention to the Morrissey brothers.
We see one of the suspects in the CCTV footage vaulting the counter at the post office. The footprint on the counter was a size 5, which is incredibly small. And there was a very, very small percentage of the adult male population that would have size 5 feet. When we went to the burn site, we found size 5 shoes in the bonfire. We found size 5 footprints in the Gulf. Declan Morrissey had size 5 feet. This was huge because the chances of it being somebody else with such a distinctive physical characteristic were very, very, very small.
The shoe was not the only evidence recovered from the bonfire.
Once we recovered the phones from the burn site, they were sent off for forensic analysis. One of the pieces of information that we retrieved allowed us to identify where the phone had actually been purchased in the days leading up to Craig's murder. And from that, we managed to obtain CCTV of Anselm Ribera, the gunman, actually in the shop where the phone and the SIM card were purchased.
And that's not the only CCTV evidence the prosecution is able to present in connection with the burn site.
There's a newsagents nearby that does have CCTV, and on that they find footage of what appears to be one of the suspects. He is clearly hiding his hand, which leads them to suspect that it's the person who had been hit with the cricket bat in the Fairfield post office. He is buying matches, which also suggests that he's buying those so he can then set alight to the evidence at the burn site.
The man in the newsagents is identified as Declan Morrissey.
Craig, in defending his parents, had hit the robbers, and sure enough, Declan Morrissey had injuries to his hand.
We had the cricket bat, and you can actually marry up the bat with the injuries so that you can say that those injuries were inflicted by that weapon. Because we knew that Declan Morrissey had injuries, we thought he might have sought treatment for it. And we asked to view the CCTV in all of the local hospitals. And lo and behold, on the CCTV from Solihull Hospital, we see Declan Morrissey sitting in the waiting room. And it actually turned out that he had gone there to seek treatment for an injury to his hand.
Despite the compelling evidence being produced, the men accused of Craig's murder seem unfazed.
Denials throughout. They did have that air of invincibility about them. They sat behind their screen with the guards in the dock, sniggering, laughing and joking.
They appeared to have no shame, no remorse, no sense of guilt.
There were times when they would just smirk.
But the prosecution has evidence that will wipe the smirks from their faces. CCTV from the morning of January the 9th.
And one of the very important pieces of CCTV that we discovered was from a petrol station where we see all 4 suspects and both vehicles, the Golf and the Mondeo. So this actually puts them together on the day of the murder. So obviously it will take a lot of explaining as to why the 4 of them with 2 stolen vehicles were together on the morning of Craig's murder, close to where the post office was located.
The film was shown of Ribera getting petrol, and his mother was sat directly behind me, and I heard her say, "That's not my boy," and I turned to Ken and I said, "We both know it is."
But it is the gang themselves that deal the final blow in calls they made from prison.
So yeah, prison calls are recorded, and only in special circumstances can we use those in evidence. It's another criminal that they're speaking to on the phone, and they become loose. They're talking about what they've done, almost bragging about what they've done. They were talking about it very freely, and they're laughing about it, as if it doesn't mean anything, that they've caused this pain and anguish to people that ultimately led to the death of an individual. Just terrible.
These men were all acting together. They had gone in together, each knowing that they were armed and with the purpose of robbing the post office. So it was the classic joint enterprise.
So Declan and Christopher Morrissey are almost the masterminds. They've planned it, they steal the car, they're seen coming and going to Ribera's flat. Ribera pulled the trigger. They're all responsible.
After an 11-week trial, it is now down to the jury to decide.
Every officer that sits in a courtroom would lie to you if they don't have that feeling that something might horribly go wrong at the end of it. The jury was out for some time. It seemed like forever, which makes you think, oh my God, we may have failed.
We just held our breaths when we were waiting for the verdicts.
On the 16th of December 2009, the jury convicted Anselm Ribera, Declan Morrissey and Christopher Morrissey of the murder of Craig Hodson Walker. They also convicted all three men of the attempted murder of Craig's father, Ken, as well as charges of armed robbery. It becomes kind of harder to have the same argument of joint enterprise for Adrian Snape, the getaway driver.
Mr. Snape always denied that he had realised there was a gun and that there was going to be a killing. And so the jury acquitted him.
When Adrian Snape was cleared, it was quite a dramatic moment. He jumped up and shouted out loud, I told you, I effing told you. Snape was removed from the court by security, and some of the jurors were visibly upset by it.
In a final act of disrespect, all four offenders choose not to attend court for their sentencing.
So, cowardly is how I'd best describe it, cowardly. Happy to sneer for the weeks preceding that in the courtroom before conviction, but then couldn't face justice.
Regardless of their absence, the sentences are passed.
Anselm Ribera and both Morrissey brothers each received a life sentence with a minimum of 34 years.
Adrian Snape was found guilty of involvement in the armed robbery and was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment.
It didn't make any difference because on the 9th of January, that's when we started our life sentence.
But Craig's family do take some small comfort in the fact that he was instrumental in bringing his own killers to justice.
He actually installed the CCTV that captured the offence taking place, captured his own death, which provided the investigation team with some evidence. Also, in defending his parents, using the cricket bat, causing the injury to the wrists of the suspects, he played a vital role in actually securing convictions for the killers.
Till the day I die, I'll never forget the 9th of January 2009. It's imprinted, it's there, and no, our lives are completely changed on that day and will always be changed from that day. My family is depleted by one. I never hear his voice again. And I miss his little hugs and his little chuckles. I just miss him. If Craig was here right now, I'd just say I love you. Don't need to say any more.